But I just don't really feel like swearing in my music. I don't want to end up being awful and intolerable alone, laying in a marble bathtub by myself. As pop princesses go, Taylor Swift couldn't be more perfect. So perfect, in fact, you wonder how they ever allowed that hacky sack of teenage hormones, Harry Styles, anywhere near her. Because, like all exquisitely crafted fairy tales, the legend is dependent on nourishing and protecting its heroine, heroine with an E. In Taylor's case, her best interests are served by a tight knit group of managers and PRs who lay down rules regarding fashion decency. No flesh below the waistline if there's too much shown, and exposed navels are a no go. While a pair of extra, extra large, narrow eyes ex Marines are detailed to ward off any physical threat, both real or imagined. So it literally says here that her PR is crafted to be like a fairy tale. Okay, that's crazy. And the photography studio is subject to an impressive security sweep prior to her entrance. Such is the attention to image management. It's something of a surprise when Taylor politely requests her own musical accompaniment for the InStyle shoot, and a hip-hop heavy playlist is selected. More so when an hour in, there she is, shaking her tush and Valentino to Jay-Z's 99 Problems, blissfully rapping along to the profanity-laden track with word-perfect proficiency. Why can't I say that? Okay. Turns out the 23-year-old, whose most famous lyric is arguably the rather less contentious "We are never ever getting back together," is quite the hip-hop aficionado. A few hours later, Taylor is telling me how growing up, Brittany Hansen and the Dixie Chicks fought for space in her bedroom alongside the poster boys of rap. 50 Cent, I lost my place. Eminem, 50 Cent and Eminem. I love hip hop so much, she gushes. There's something so honest about it. The unlikely suggestion that she might one day appear on an Eminem record is met with unexpected enthusiasm. Nobody wants to hear me rap, but I'd sing a chorus for someone for sure. I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. But surely your team might have something to say on the subject. I don't have a big, scary management situation where I have to ask them, she replies. If I wrote a song called F, I think people would kind of raise their hand and go like, maybe swear less in your music. Holy shit, that's insane considering what we just saw about the lyric changes. What the fuck? Okay. But I just don't really feel like swearing in my music. I can't believe that. Okay. The idea that some cursing blunt token playa could possibly get their mitts on sweet Taylor Swift will send a wave of shivers coursing across the plains of middle America. But maybe that's the point. The singer's phenomenal talent and success is in part as much due to the quixotic nature of her character as it is reliant on the fictional or otherwise girl next door persona promoted. I always think of where she talks about like her neighbor, your wife waters flowers, I'm gonna kill her. I always think that she's talking about like the girl next door herself. The character is reliant on as much due. I just saw that. Promoted by she and the team behind her, all too aware of the power of the playground dollar. That makes me think of Me, where she said she wrote it for kids. There's a game to be played, and she plays it extremely well. Wrapped up in her neat tartan checked coat, hello Evermore, to stave off the chill of the British winter. She's in London. She's both uniquely beautiful and gawky at the same time, still not used to her 5-foot 10-inch model frame. She chats away like a teenager during recess. Her biography, recounted so many times before, takes on an almost magical, one of Taylor's favorite words, she said it multiple times last night, quality, a charming script worthy of a Broadway musical. How she and her younger brother, Austin, 3 years her junior, were raised on a 10-acre Christmas tree farm in Pennsylvania, which, kind of true, they did own the farm, but she didn't live there, by doting parents, Scott and Andrea. He, a high-flying stockbroker with financial behemoth Merrill Lynch. She, a stay-at-home mom. That's not even true. She was a marketing executive. How she was always the odd one out, the loner in a class of her upscale junior high school in Wyomissing, confiding in her diary and poetry for comfort. Then, having picked up a guitar at age 12 and encouraged by her family, began performing in local talent contests and singing Dolly Parton and Dixie Chicks covers and her self-pinned tunes in coffee bars, playing for tips, as she puts it. At the same time this was happening, she did a little modeling for Abercrombie and Fitch. This is when she was with Dan Demtro, who was Britney's manager, who sued them later on. Won a national poetry contest with an ode entitled Monster in My Closet. We've talked about that before. And started bombarding record companies with demos. Her prodigious musical talent prodigious musical talent only had the effect of increasing alienation among her envious classmates. They thought her weird and different, she says. So she'd go home and write a song about her tormentors and kept strumming away in those coffee bars. Makes me think of Karma and the coffee. Working audiences of up to 200. When you're dealing with something like loneliness or confusion or rejection or frustration, those emotions are so jumbled up in your head, she says, looking. For me, the only way to condense them down into one thing is to write a 3.5-minute song about it. I would sit with the guitar and in my head, I would go, if you could say one thing to that girl, what would you say? The story is so polished that even when relying childhood traumas, which might consign lesser beings to years on the psychiatrist's couch, she manages to gift wrap her darkest moments with a Polly Pocket meets Tracy, I don't even know what that means. Tracy Emin by Hasbro countenance. Didn't she have a best friend back then? My mom was my best friend. She cheerily comes back. I first started writing songs because I didn't really have anyone else to talk to. As sad as that sounds, I was going through this really hard time at school where I didn't have any friends. Songwriting for me just started out as therapy. There's even a moment of epiphany where the young Taylor sat watching an episode of Behind the Music featuring Faith Hill and decided if she were ever to succeed, then Nashville was the place to be. She finally made the permanent move 750 miles southeast. Remember when she said the number 750 one time in the air store? At the age of 14, she had a development deal with RCA. Last year, less than a decade on, Forbes magazine declared her the highest paid celebrity under 30. Interestingly, we're climbing the wrought iron spiral staircase leading up to the studio's anonymous meeting room where our interview takes place. Taylor can't hide her pleasure. She loves spiral staircases. She has one in her custom-built Nashville duplex penthouse. That leads, you're going to think I'm weird, to kind of a floor-to-ceiling glass turret dominated by a giant birdcage full of fluffy cushions where she often sits with her guitar and writes songs. That apartment still looks the same now. It's like a time capsule. And she described it, and Rolling Stone has described it as Wonderland meets Peter Pan whimsy. It also has a koi pond inside the apartment. It would take me longer than the allotted hour I'm given today to fully penetrate the carefully assembled construct that has made Taylor Swift so successful. But we get canceled or like reported for saying things like this. Much longer, I imagine, than it took young Master Styles to fix his sights on her, for instance. Eminently likable, she has an obvious attraction, but the flaws in this glinting force of parent-friendly teenage angst and celebration that make her so interesting, and without a doubt allow her to emotionally connect so deeply with legions of her Swifties around the globe. And connect she does, stacking up over 23 million albums sold since her debut release in 2006. Last year's Red album, which contributions by Ed Sheeran and Snow Patrol's Gary Lightbody, was squarely aimed at expanding her core following. See, this is so funny. Red was squarely aimed at expanding her core following in the UK and Europe, right at the same time when she dates a boy from the most famous band in the world who happens to be from the UK, who happens to be at the exact same time trying to expand their reach into the US. Okay, cool. Coincidence. Her first British #1 and sold more than 1.2 million copies first week of release. So Red was her first British #1 because she was dating Harry Styles. Not that it's not a great record, because it is. The most illuminating sections of the interview occur when the conversation veers off the beaten path and she's required to abandon the script, which say, with a question on religious beliefs, elicit the polite yet carefully worded rebuff. Religion and politics are things that you shouldn't really bring up at a dinner party or an interview. I don't want to seem like I'm imposing what I believe on anybody else. Often it's some trivial line of inquiry that allows greater insight, revealing both an intellect to match her supreme musical abilities and no small amount of engaging sass. Okay. What's your favorite song? My favorite song that I've written, she replies. No, somebody else's, I say. Probably You're So Vain. When I suggest Carly Simon's classic hit was written about Hollywood's most beguiling Lothario, Warren Beatty, she's quick to flex her superior knowledge on the subject. I don't think anyone really knows. There are a lot of different theories. Then palpably warming to the topic. See, I'm not the first person people have been like, oh my God, who are her songs about? Oh yes, that much chronicled love life, one of the main factors to Taylor's success. Elevating her above all peers is the remarkable confessional narrative she invests in her songs, an open diary in which she takes on the roles of wronged, righteous, and avenged angel. roles. Okay. Um, striking a unique chord with the mass ranks of young, predominantly female teendom. While songs such as Picture to Burn, Teardrops, Should Have Said No are said to be about ex-boyfriends from her teenage years, it's those it's those alluding to her most noted beaux, Joe Jonas, Taylor Lautner, John Mayer, and Jake Gyllenhaal, that have provoked critics to question her motivations and stoked the embers of a backlash. Okay. There remains a not so unspoken rule in the industry that only men with guitars have the right of reply. And meanwhile, the British tabloids, eager to make merry, are already speculating on whether Taylor has penned a tune or two about her latest flames, America's political heir, Connor Kennedy, and our very own Harry Styles of One Direction fame. For her part, Taylor is justifiably unrepentant on the subject. Choosing to let your fans into your life is a good thing because it connects you to your fans forever. Unfortunately, when you let your fans into your life through your lyrics, you're also letting everyone else into your life. For me, it's never been something that I've ever regretted. Does she ever censor herself? No, I don't see the point. She says, adding that boyfriends, past or present, are included in that certainty. But has anyone ever written a song about you? Yes, and I can take it, she insists. If I'm going to write songs about my exes, they can write songs about me. That's how it works. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm not going to sit there and say, I'm the only one who can write songs about this relationship. It's fair game. For those who challenge her integrity, their accusations are mistaken. Teenage girls choose their torch bearers wisely and aren't that easily fooled. However, while Taylor's happy to commit her romantic travails to music, interviewers are warned off of probing deeper. When I tell her over the winter months, the British newspapers reduced her output down to two details: Harry Styles and her love of Portobello Road antiques. That was low-key crazy because I had literally screenshotted her at Portobello Antiques like 10 minutes before this, and so that like shook me. She chooses to ignore the former and concentrate her exasperation on her bargain hunt purchases. Where'd that come from? Sure, I like antiques, but do I like flowers? Yes. I think when you don't talk about your personal life in the press, I think they make one up for you. Okay. I ask her if she's happier in love or out of love. It's hard to say, she comes back, because there are beautiful things about both. And I just feel like you have to find those things. Speaking to Taylor, what becomes apparent is that far from being the man-grabbing vixen the headlines have recently portrayed, she endearingly clings to the romantic ideals. There's a sweet schoolyard innocence about her and her views on love. Like she's stuck, whether that be for the benefit of herself or her fans. As the girl with curly hair resigned to eating lunch alone, she tells me that she's not really much of a keeper in toucher when it comes to ex-boyfriends, and she doesn't have many male friends. I'm a girl's girl. I have guy friends, but the problem with having guy friends is like I always get linked to them and they'll end up in a slideshow of people I've reportedly dated on the internet. I mean, that's all kinds of complicated things. There's all kinds of complicated things with having guys as friends. What kind of complicated? If they have a girlfriend who doesn't like you, things like that. So I have to have like 2 or 3 guy friends, a select few, but I have 20 to 25 really good girlfriends. High on that list are Glee star Diana Agron, fashion stylist Ashley, I can never say her last name, and jewelry designer Claire Kissinger. We were just talking about her earlier. In April of last year, Taylor tweeted pictures of the foursome dressed to the vintage nine, celebrating legendary actress Shirley MacLaine's 79th birthday at the Beverly Hills Hotel Polo Lounge. I finally have really amazing girlfriend. She says, if something happens, I have 6 girls. I'm going to call just one right after another, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I say she comes across as quite the old soul, and she quite likes that. I like to think that once I've learned a lesson in this life, I don't have to learn it twice. Like when it comes to relationships, friendships, perfection is unrealistic. I think what's beautiful about life is the constant imperfection. Do you dwell on things? Definitely. I mean, as a writer, you play back what happened over the past year over and over again, and that's where you get inspiration from. Just because I'm eager to hear her reaction, I wonder whether she would like to fast forward and see what her life looks like in 30 years. That would be terrifying. She holds her head in her hand. Half of me says, absolutely, yes. What does my life look like? And then there's another part of me that's like, I don't necessarily think it would be cute anymore for me to be putting on sparkly dresses and strutting around a stage. Settled down? Maybe. Depends on what happens. Would you like a family? I think so, but I'm not sure. Like, I don't even have a master plan. I thought I did have a dream scenario before. But it turns out that I changed my mind, and that essentially in your 20s, all of the puzzle pieces in your life are thrown up in the air and they just fall in whatever place. And I think that's healthy. What I worry about is that I never want to end up kind of, oh, this is the whole reason I screenshot this entire article. What I worry about is that I never want to end up kind of a self-centered, vain human being. My friend Lena did this interview where she said you have to have an equal amount of self-loathing and self-love. Lena, I say, she's on a show called Girls, blah, blah, blah. My fears circle around me making the wrong choices and messing this up for myself. I don't want to end up being awful and intolerable, alone, laying in a marble bathtub by myself. Like sad with a glass of wine, just complaining that my life ended up alone because I pushed everyone away because I thought I was too good to hang out with everyone. The typical Hollywood cliche of the poor lonely starlet with no one because she put up all these walls and didn't trust anyone. Slamming the gates, right? That's my fear, and that's why I live the life the way I live my life, because I would so much rather feel everything than end up like that. And might you still be writing that last breakup song? It could be, she smiles. It could be happening. I hope not. Okay. I'm about to read y'all's comments, but like, is that fucking insane? Also, this was her favorite. This is gorgeous. This is her favorite outfit. That was made by Harvey Weinstein's wife. Isn't that crazy? Marchesa is her brand.